How accurate and realistic is GTA 5 to real life? Weird question, but worth looking into. Starting with FIB. So, GTA 5's got this whole thing with the FIB, right? And man, some of the stuff they pull in the game is wild. But here's the kicker. Some of it ain't too far from the truth. Take that FIB dude Dave Norton hooking up Michael DeSanta with a new life. Sounds crazy, but the real FBI's actually pulled similar stunts. Back in the day, the FBI had this thing called the Top Echelon Informant Program. Basically, they'd buddy up with big-time crooks to get the dirt on other bad guys. One of the most famous cases? This Boston gangster named Whitey Bulger. Dude was snitching for the FBI while still running his criminal empire. Talk about playing both sides. And get this, the FBI had a ton of these informants. We're talking like 1,500 just in New England over a 30-year period. Some of these guys were straight-up criminals, and the FBI would sometimes even give them a heads-up about investigations. Sounds a lot like Dave and Michael's deal, right? Now, GTA 5 goes hard with the whole FIB is corrupt thing. They've got them doing all sorts of messed up stuff. While the real FBI isn't out here acting like they're in an action movie, they've had their share of sketchy moments. Ever heard of COINTELPRO? It was this secret FBI program in the 50s and 60s, where they spied on and messed with political groups. Not exactly by the book stuff. But hey, times have changed. The FBI's cleaned up its act a lot since then. They've got more rules now about working with informants and stuff. Still, all that old drama is probably why GTA 5 paints the FIB as these shady dudes. So yeah, while GTA 5 definitely cranks things up to 11 with the FIB, it's not like they pulled it all out of thin air. They took some real history and went nuts with it, which is pretty much GTA's whole deal. Connecting to this, let's talk about Michael DeSanta's lavish lifestyle and see how it stacks up against real life. So, Michael's got this sweet pad in Rockford Hills, right? It's basically GTA's version of Beverly Hills. In real life, a mansion in Beverly Hills? You're looking at some serious cash. We're talking anywhere from $5 million to $50 million, depending on how fancy you want to get. Let's say Michael's place is on the modest side for Beverly Hills, and clock it in at around $10 million. Now, owning a place like that isn't just about the purchase price. You've got property taxes, which in LA County run about 1% of the assessed value. So that's another $100,000 a year, easy. Then there's maintenance, utilities, maybe a gardener or two to keep that tennis court looking sharp. We're probably talking another $50,000 to $100,000 a year for all that. Let's talk rides. Michael's got a sweet collection, with each family member rocking their own set of wheels. In Beverly Hills, you can't be cruising around in some basic ride. We're talking high-end stuff. A nice luxury sedan for Michael, maybe an SUV for the wife, and some flashy sports cars for the kids. That's easily another $1 million in cars, plus insurance, maintenance, gas. Probably another $50,000 a year. Now, living expenses in a place like Beverly Hills? That's a whole other ballgame. Fancy restaurants, designer clothes, golf club memberships. That lifestyle ain't cheap. For a family of 4 living it up, you're looking at maybe $200,000 to $300,000 a year, minimum. So, if we add all this up, Michael needs to be pulling in at least $500,000 to $1 million a year, after taxes, just to keep this lifestyle afloat. And remember, this dude's retired and his family's unemployed. Now, is this possible for an ex-criminal like Michael? Surprisingly, yeah, it could be. Here's where GTA 5 gets pretty realistic. Former big-time criminals, especially those involved in stuff like bank heists, often have ways of stashing and laundering their cash. Offshore accounts are a classic move. Places like the Cayman Islands or Switzerland have been popular for hiding money. These days, it's gotten tougher with international banking regulations, but for someone who pulled off big scores years ago, it's plausible. Shell companies are another trick of the trade. Setting up legit-looking businesses to funnel money through is a common way to make dirty money look clean. Michael could easily have a few of these running, maybe some real estate companies or investment firms that exist mainly on paper. In the real world, we've seen cases of retired criminals living pretty sweet lives. Take Whitey Bulger, the gangster we mentioned earlier. When he was finally caught after years on the run, he had over $800,000 in cash hidden in the walls of his apartment. And that's just what they found. GTA 5 gets pretty accurate with the idea that someone with Michael's background could maintain this lifestyle, at least for a while. The game shows him struggling with boredom and family issues, which is pretty spot on. Many former criminals find it hard to adjust to normal life, even if they're living in luxury. What the game doesn't really get into, which would be a factor in real life, is the constant stress of maintaining this facade. In reality, someone like Michael would always be looking over his shoulder, worried about the IRS or other agencies catching on to his financial tricks. The game also simplifies how easy it is to spend this kind of money without raising suspicion. In real life, big purchases and lavish spending can trigger all sorts of red flags with financial institutions and law enforcement. So, while GTA 5 nails the surface-level accuracy of a retired criminal's luxe lifestyle, it glosses over some of the more complex realities. But hey, that's why it's a game, right? In the end, Michael's lifestyle in GTA 5 is a pretty solid representation of what a successful retired criminal might be able to pull off, at least for a while. It's flashy, it's expensive, and it's just plausible enough to make us believe that maybe, just maybe, crime does pay. Until it doesn't. But that's a whole other story. Now, how does City of Los Santos compare to Los Angeles? Rockstar Games really went all out in recreating Los Angeles for GTA 5, and honestly, they nailed a lot of it. First up, we've got downtown Los Santos. Just like LA's downtown, it's got those sleek skyscrapers and busy streets. The game's got its version of landmarks like the US Bank Tower, called the Maze Bank Tower in-game, and the Westin Bonaventure Hotel, the Arcadius Business Center. They even tossed in a take on the Bradbury Building, which you might recognize from Blade Runner. Pretty spot-on stuff. Heading west, we hit Rockford Hills, GTA's version of Beverly Hills. Man, they captured that bougie vibe perfectly. You've got the fancy mansions, the high-end shops, the perfectly manicured lawns. It's like they literally copy-pasted Rodeo Drive into the game. They even included their own spin on the iconic Beverly Hills Hotel, called the Richmond Hotel in-game. Vespucci Beach is basically Venice Beach, and they got the essence just right. You've got the Muscle Beach setup, street performers, that quirky boardwalk vibe. They didn't forget the canals either, though they're a bit more, shall we say, swimmable in the game than in real life. Del Perro Pier is clearly based on Santa Monica Pier, complete with a Ferris wheel and roller coaster. It's not an exact copy, but it captures that classic SoCal pier atmosphere perfectly. The game's version of Hollywood, called Vinewood, is pretty spot on too. You've got the iconic Hollywood sign, Vinewood in the game, the Walk of Fame, and even a take on the famous Chateau Marmont Hotel. Now, GTA 5 does take some creative liberties. The geography is compressed. You can drive across the whole map in like 15 minutes, which anyone who's been stuck on the 405 knows is a fantasy. They've also moved some things around. For example, the Getty Center inspired the Quartz Center in the game, but it's in a totally different location. The game also includes areas inspired by places outside LA proper. There's a Salton Sea-inspired area, and the countryside north of the city takes cues from places like Calabasas and the Santa Monica Mountains. One thing GTA 5 really nails is the feel of LA's different neighborhoods. You've got the hipster vibe of Mirror Park, based on Silver Lake, the gritty feel of South Los Santos, inspired by South Central, and the luxury of Rockford Hills. They even included LA's famous, or infamous, car culture. In both the game and real life, you're pretty much nothing without your ride. Where the game diverges a bit is in its exaggeration of certain aspects. The crime rate in Los Santos is way higher than real-life LA, thankfully. The police are a lot more, let's say, trigger-happy in the game. And while LA has its share of colorful characters, they're not quite as over the top as the ones you meet in Los Santos. One thing the game doesn't really capture is LA's incredible diversity. While Los Santos has some diversity, it doesn't come close to representing the true melting pot that is Los Angeles. Alright, now whole FIB versus IAA beef in GTA 5, and see how it stacks up against the real-world FBI versus CIA rivalry. Rockstar Games definitely picked up on some real-world drama and cranked it up for our entertainment. In GTA 5, we see the FIB and IAA constantly at each other's throats, fighting over budgets, trying to one-up each other, and even getting into shootouts. While the real FBI and CIA aren't exactly having gunfights in the streets, there's been some serious tension between these agencies over the years. Let's rewind a bit. The FBI and CIA were born in different eras for different purposes. The FBI came first, set up in 1908 to handle domestic intelligence and federal crimes. The CIA showed up later in 1947, focused on foreign intelligence after World War II. On paper, they're supposed to stay in their lanes. FBI at home, CIA abroad. But in reality, things get messy. One of the biggest beefs between these agencies kicked off in the 1970s. The Church Committee in 1975 dug into both agencies and found out they were up to some pretty shady stuff. The FBI had its COINTELPRO program spying on Americans, while the CIA had been trying to assassinate foreign leaders. Talk about airing dirty laundry. This led to some real trust issues between the agencies. They were both trying to protect their turf and reputation, which sometimes meant not sharing info. Sound familiar? Fast forward to September 11th, and this lack of communication became a huge problem. The 9/11 Commission report basically said, hey, if these agencies had been talking to each other, we might have seen this coming. Now, GTA 5 takes this rivalry and turns it up to 11. In the game, we see agents Steve Haynes and Dave Norton of the FIB constantly butting heads with the IAA. They're all about budget fights, secret operations, and trying to make the other agency look bad. While it's exaggerated, it's not totally out of left field. In real life, the FBI and CIA have had their share of budget battles. After September 11th, there was a huge reform in how intelligence agencies operate, and everyone was fighting for a piece of the pie. The FBI started beefing up its intelligence operations, which the CIA saw as stepping on its toes. There's also been real-world drama over jurisdiction. In GTA 5, we see the FIB and IAA fighting over who gets to handle certain operations. In reality, there's been confusion and conflict over who handles what, especially when it comes to counterterrorism. The FBI has expanded its international presence, which hasn't always sat well with the CIA. One thing GTA 5 gets pretty right is the idea of rival agencies running their own agendas. In the game, we see the FIB and IAA each running operations the other doesn't know about. This mirrors real-life incidents where the FBI and CIA have kept each other in the dark about important intel or operations. But the shootouts and over-the-top action sequences between the agencies? Yeah, that's pure Hollywood. But the game needed to be GTA right. Also, is Los Angeles filled with military components ready so Trevor could steal them? In GTA 5, we've got Fort Zancudo, this massive military base just outside Los Santos. It's packed with tanks, fighter jets, and soldiers ready to rain hell on anyone who crosses the fence. While it's awesome for gameplay, it's not exactly a mirror image of LA's military scene. In reality, Los Angeles doesn't have a huge active military base right next door like Fort Zancudo. The closest major installations are a bit further out. You've got Edwards Air Force Base about 100 miles northeast of LA, and Naval Base Ventura County about 65 miles to the northwest. So yeah, you're not going to see tanks rolling down Rodeo Drive anytime soon. That said, LA does have some military presence. The Los Angeles Air Force Base is actually in El Segundo, right next to LAX. But don't expect to see fighter jets there. It's mostly a space systems research and development center. Not quite as exciting as Fort Zancudo, huh? There's also the Joint Forces Training Base in Los Alamitos, which is home to the California National Guard. It's within the greater LA area, but it's not the kind of place where you'd find advanced fighter jets or tanks just sitting around. Now let's talk response time. In GTA 5, if you cause enough chaos, the military shows up pretty quick with tanks and jets. In real life, not so much. Military response to domestic incidents is a big deal and involves a whole chain of command. The local police and SWAT would be the first responders, with the National Guard potentially being called in for really serious situations. GTA 5 also features military ships off the coast of Los Santos. While the port of Los Angeles does sometimes host Navy ships, it's not a permanent stationing like we see in the game. Naval Base San Diego, about 120 miles south, is where you'd find most of the Navy action. One aspect the game doesn't really touch on is the economic impact of the military in the LA area. Defense contractors and aerospace companies play a big role in the real LA economy. Companies like Northrop Grumman and Boeing have major operations in the area, contributing to LA's nickname as the aerospace capital of the world. The game also skips over the Coast Guard, which has a significant presence in the LA area in real life. They're a key part of port security and maritime law enforcement, but I guess chasing drug runners in cutters isn't as exciting as stealing fighter jets. Now, GTA 5's portrayal of the car theft scene in Los Santos, especially Franklin's involvement, has some pretty interesting parallels with real-life Los Angeles. In GTA 5, we see Franklin starting out as a repo man for a shady car dealer, but he's got connections to a larger car theft network. This setup isn't too far off from how some real-world car theft rings operate in LA. Los Angeles has consistently been one of the hotspots for car theft in the US. In 2019, about 150 cars were stolen every day in LA County. That's a lot of Grand Theft Auto, folks. The game captures this prevalence pretty well, making car theft feel like a common occurrence in Los Santos. Now let's talk about organized car theft rings. In GTA 5, we see a network of thieves, mechanics, and dealers all working together. This actually mirrors real-life operations pretty closely. LA has seen its fair share of sophisticated car theft rings over the years. For example, in 2019, the LAPD busted a ring that had stolen over 250 cars worth about $4.5 million. They had a whole system: thieves, fake ID makers, even crooked DMV employees. It's not too different from the interconnected world of car crime we see in Los Santos. The game also touches on the idea of luxury and high-end car theft, which is a real issue in LA. In Beverly Hills and other upscale areas, high-end cars are prime targets. The game reflects this with missions involving stealing specific luxury vehicles. One thing GTA 5 gets right is the use of technology in car theft. In the game, we see characters using high-tech devices to break into cars. This mirrors real life, where thieves use signal boosters and relay devices to hijack key fob signals. LAPD has reported a rise in these tech-savvy thefts, especially for luxury cars. But the game also simplifies the process of selling stolen cars. In Los Santos, it seems pretty straightforward to offload a stolen vehicle. In reality, it's much more complicated. Stolen cars in LA are often quickly dismantled for parts, exported, or given new identities through a process called VIN switching. One aspect the game doesn't dive into much is the international nature of car theft. In real-life LA, many stolen cars end up shipped overseas. There have been cases of cars stolen in LA turning up as far away as Eastern Europe or Southeast Asia. The role of chop shops is something the game gets pretty right. These illegal garages that dismantle stolen cars are a real problem in LA. In 2020, the LAPD busted a massive chop shop operation that had processed hundreds of stolen vehicles. Franklin's transition from small-time car thief to bigger criminal enterprises is also not unrealistic. Law enforcement officials in LA have noted that car theft is often a gateway into other forms of organized crime. So, while GTA 5 definitely amps up the action and simplifies some aspects of car theft for the sake of gameplay, it does capture some real elements of LA's car theft scene. So, GTA 5 makes heists look like the coolest thing ever, right? You've got Michael, Franklin, and Trevor pulling off these incredible, over-the-top robberies that would make Ocean's 11 jealous. But how close is this to reality? First off, big, elaborate heists do happen in LA, but they're not nearly as common as GTA 5 might have you believe. LA isn't exactly the heist capital of the world, but it's had its fair share of dramatic robberies over the years. Remember the North Hollywood shootout in 1997? Two guys with body armor and automatic weapons tried to rob a Bank of America. It turned into a massive gunfight with the police that lasted 44 minutes. While not exactly a heist in the GTA sense, it shows that big, dramatic robberies do happen. Or how about the Hollywood Hills burglar bunch from the late 2000s? This group of teens broke into celebrities' homes and stole millions in cash and valuables. Not quite as action-packed as GTA heists, but still pretty wild. Now, GTA 5 does get some things right about heists. The planning phase? That's legit. Real-life heists often involve careful planning, inside information, and a crew with different skills. The game nails this aspect pretty well. But the game, you can pull off heists left and right. In reality, big heists are pretty rare. LA sees plenty of robberies, but full-on heists? Not an everyday occurrence. GTA heists are massive operations involving dozens of dead bodies and millions in loot. Real heists are usually smaller scale. In 2020, LA saw about 7,000 robberies, but most were way less dramatic than anything in GTA. Our trio in GTA 5 pulls off some incredible heists with a pretty high success rate. In real life, most ambitious heists get foiled. The bigger and more complex the plan, the more likely something goes wrong. In GTA, you can shake off a 5-star wanted level pretty easy. In real life, law enforcement response to major heists is intense and long-lasting. The 2018 Securitas heist in LA, they're still looking for some of those suspects. That said, LA has seen some pretty GTA-worthy heists. In 2017, a crew stole $4.5 million in gold flakes from an armored truck in downtown LA. They're still at large, by the way. Maybe they've been playing too much GTA? And get this, in 2021, some thieves actually cut a hole in the roof of a Best Buy in LA and rappelled in to steal a bunch of merchandise. That's some serious GTA energy right there. In the end, GTA 5's heists are like LA's real crime scene viewed through a Hollywood lens. Bigger, louder, and way more likely to involve miniguns and skydiving. It's not accurate, but man, is it fun to play. After all the analysis, I'm gonna give GTA 5 8 out of 10 for realism. They did everything as much as they could without ruining Grand Theft Auto vibe of chaos. Kudos. You tell me in the comments what's your rating for GTA realism. Subscribe to the channel and I'll see you in the next video.